Welcome to the Shrink Down. Today is our last episode for this season. So we're going to be taking a break over the summer and we'll be back this fall. Today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Anna Hammond. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and the owner of Tompkins and Associates. She has been working with children, adolescents, young adults, and families for over 18 years in a variety of settings. Dr. Hammond enjoys working with teens and young adults who experience anxiety, depression, neurodivergence, and adjustment challenges. Dr. Hammond also supports parents who are navigating the challenging world of parenting complex children. Additionally, Dr. Hammond consults with area school districts to support students' needs. In her free time, Dr. Hammond enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 children, gardening, reading, and taking her dog for walks. Welcome.
Yay!
Welcome, Anna.
So our topic today is low demand and gentle parenting, which actually Anna suggested this topic to Terry. And then Terry said, why don't we just have you join us and tell us more about what you're seeing in your practice and in your daily life, and we'll share our experiences as well. But before we get into today's topic, we are going to do our 4-minute faves. Anna, will have you go last. Who wants to go first?
I'll dive in. I know that I texted Terry this as a show recommendation and said I was using this as my 4-minute fave. And Terry was like, well, I was going to use that as my 4-minute fave. And then I somehow texted Lauren and she was like, well, that's what my 4-minute fave was going to be. So this show comes highly recommended.
Clearly. Clearly.
And it is the 4 seasons on Netflix, limited series. There are 8 episodes. So it's 2 episodes per season. And it is actually based on an older movie. Yeah, Alan Alda and Carol Burnett. So the movie was written by Alan Alda. So it's, and I think he's still credited in the 4 seasons show.
Yes.
And it's 3 couples.
Yep.
And they are securely in middle age. They're all in their, would you say like 50s?
Yeah. I think early 50s. Yeah.
Early 50s. And kind of navigating marriages and relationships, especially when very early on, one of the couples announces that they're going to divorce, and then how that ripples through their relationships. And it is so good. I feel like anyone who is in like mid 40s to mid 50s, smack dab in that, will enjoy it and see a lot of themselves and their marriages at certain points within the show. I think if you're younger, I feel like you're going to just be like, no.
Well, and I'll say,
not for me.
My parents are watching it and loving it. So older as well.
Older
Yeah.
yes, because you've been through it.
Yeah.
But I think if you're younger, you might have this romanticized, like, that's never how I'm going to be with my spouse. Like, we're going to love each other forever. And then you get to this point, you're like, I mean, sure.
I think it would come off as boring and cliche. A lot of cliched stereotypes. Unfortunately, a lot of times marriage stereotypes exist for a reason.
I was going to say all stereotypes exist for a reason, right?
Exactly.
There's truth. Yes.
I found it super watchable. Dan, my husband and I have been watching it. We're not finished yet. We're just about maybe halfway through. Maybe we've watched 4 episodes. We love it. Tina Fey, Steve Carell are in it. It's Tina Fey writing at her best. I was a big fan of 30 Rock. I think she's so funny. She's like one of my favorite comedians
So good.
and actresses. So it's good quality Tina Fey programming.
And Will Forte, he is a gem.
Yeah, he's
a gem in this. Like, I just love his character throughout the whole show.
Yeah, he's good.
I finished it this weekend, and
So we're not done either, but I just jumping in on this as the fave, listen to the Tina Fey interview with Amy Poehler on her new podcast. And she talked about how this has been something that she wanted to develop for years because she loved the original with Alan Alda and Carol Burnett. So it's a passion project of Tina Fey's. And so she worked for years developing it, getting the right cast and all. So clearly there was a lot of thought put into it. And it translated.
Yeah, it definitely did.
Yeah.
So definitely good for a watch.
Well, now I
Quick
feel like
one,
I have
too.
to watch it since all 3
Oh,
of you.
you absolutely need to
Okay.
watch it. Yeah, absolutely.
And what I will say, I'm just going to jump in with an extra, and I'm not done with this yet, but I think just because we were doing the 4 seasons, the other show that we just started to watch that might be a good one for the summer because it's kind of like quick and quirky and fun is The Residence with Uzo Aduba.
Oh,
Yeah.
many people have come to me saying I should watch
So
that.
we just started that as well. We're just kind of like jumping around, but it's super cute. She's
writing
like
that
this
down.
like quirky detective trying to solve a murder at the White House that happened during a state dinner or something. So I feel like that's also like a good vibe for summer, viewing. You don't have to think too much.
Someone said it had like a Knives Out type of feel. Yeah.
So a little bit
I
of
just
humor.
finished one and I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Multiple people have said, "Oh, you need to be watching this."
Yeah.
So
It's a couple of
that'll be
good-
my next watch.
Good shows.
It's
Yes.
about the president's personal residence. So
Yes.
you get to they show you scenes of like different parts of the White House that like you're not used to seeing, which is really
It's
cool.
really, beautifully, like the visuals are really pretty. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you, Vanessa?
So it's not a show that I'm sharing. I'm sure that's not a surprise, but so I am sharing. I'm surprised I didn't share this before, but it's my Soda Stream. Do any of you have one?
Oh no, I see it at Target all the time and
okay.
think about
Yes,
it.
I see it. Yeah.
Well,
Think about it.
so so it's a Soda Stream. So you basically make your own soda water at home, and we were going through 1,000 cans. Like, I mean, I can't even tell you.
Yes.
And our friends actually started using it, and so they had one. And so we went over and they showed us, and I was like, oh, this is so easy to use. Why are we not doing this instead of spending a fortune on, soda water that we're buying at the grocery store? And we're trying to get away from, we talked about this before, the flavors, the like natural flavors that are
Not
naturally
natural.
chemicals. So but you can actually, if you're so inclined to, you can actually add flavors to the ones that you make at home. So they sell the little bottles to add the flavors. So if you want to, you can make your own. But we love it. We use it all the time. I was afraid we weren't going to use it. It comes with different size bottles. I'd say my only about it is that they're plastic bottles, and so that's the only thing. But I actually bought a glass bottle to like pour it into. So if you're fine with plastic, then so be it. If you're trying to get away from it, we're going to be pouring ours into like those glass bottles that you see at the grocery store. But if you drink a lot of soda water, I would definitely suggest looking into it because you'll save yourself.
And when you say soda water, you mean like club soda, sparkling water type, not actual soda with sugar. Yeah.
No.
Right.
No.
You
so
mean soda water. Right.
So good question. Yeah. So it's no, because if this was made in Chicago, it'd be like water. Like, yes, it's not soda as an East Coast pop soda. Yeah, it's club soda.
Like sparkling water.
Yes.
Not pop.
Like sparkling water. Yes, not pop. Yes. That's come out of, now that I've lived on the East Coast for so long, like that has come, like is no longer part of my vocabulary.
You don't
so
say pop anymore?
I don't.
Oh.
I don't. I know.
You say gym shoes or tennis shoes?
No. Sneakers.
Oh.
I know, because when I used to say that, people would be like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
Gym shoes.
Yeah, gym shoes. They're like, what are gym shoes? I'm like, they're sneakers. The same thing with pop. They're like, what is pop? I'm like, the soda. So, yes, I don't say those things anymore.
She's an East Coast girl now.
I guess. No, it will never be. They always ask me where I'm from, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you have an accent. I'm like, I do? And then they're like, where are you from? And I'm like, Chicago. They're like, oh, that's it. I'm like, I don't think I have an accent, but apparently I do.
I don't think you do.
Apparently I do.
I don't know that any of us or our listeners will think that. So
Well, I think because it's like
Midwest.
Midwestern. Like we're like Midwest.
Yeah.
It's that Midwest. They just don't.
Well, people always ask why I don't sound like I'm from Minnesota. And I'm like, because the accent that people associate with Minnesota is like rural Minnesota. It's not as much like the Twin Cities.
Right.
Same thing with Chicago. Like if you're like born and raised Southside Chicago, you probably say things with a little bit of an accent.
Yeah.
Like, you know. Anyway. All right. Anna, do you want to share yours with us?
Sure.
Okay.
So in honor of summer, I was thinking my current fave, my family and I just got back from a tropical vacation. And while we were there, I was embracing the wide leg linen pant and loving them. And so I have decided that this is my summer fave and what I'm going to be wearing all summer long.
Where did you have like a brand or a store that you really liked?
I've bought 2 pairs so far, one from Athleta, which I was really,
Oh,
they're
nice.
Oh, I
great.
love
Yeah.
Athleta stuff.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And then another pair that I got from the J. Crew factory store.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like a really fun bright pink.
Oh,
And I
fun.
just could wear them all day.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, love that. Yes.
Really fun.
I
It's a
hate
good
wearing
rec.
shorts.
I know.
So I'm always
Yeah.
looking for like lightweight pants, flowy pants to wear in the summer. I'm just
I love
not a
that.
shorts gal. So good call.
How do they hold up in terms of
gonna ask that.
wrinkling?
Yeah.
Because I have a pair of linen shorts from Athleta, and that's the only complaint I have, is that I wear them once and they're like all wrinkly, and then drying, washing and drying them, I always have to like steam. But I don't know if with the pants, if there's more time to like let them sit down or like
No,
not
they're still
fall
pretty.
down.
I
Yeah.
think they still wrinkle,
Maybe
but
it's just linen.
yeah, it's just linen, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. So we're going to get into today's topic. So low demand, gentle parenting. So tell us what you've been noticing in your practice. Tell us a little bit about what you know about low demand, gentle parenting, and then we'll all just kind of jump in.
Okay. So Terry and I work together quite frequently on different cases.
Yeah.
I'll be working with the family. She might do an assessment and referring back and forth. And I think over the last, maybe, what would you say, Terry, like 2 years or so, we've seen several cases where this has been something that's come up.
Yep.
And I work with children as young as, the toddler years all the way up through college, young adulthood, and launching years. So that whole age span. And a lot of the work ends up being with parents, of course,
Yeah.
right? And parents have been asking a lot of questions about how to structure home life, how to get kids to do things that are non-preferred tasks. And it was sort of a reoccurring theme. And when I trained back in the early 2000s, and so strong cognitive behavioral
Yep.
therapy background, and worked in lots of programs that were rooted in point sheets and behavior plans and token economies and all the things. And so that's very much a part of my arsenal. And so when I would talk about like, what's the structure and what kind of reward strategies do you use in your house? I get a lot of like, oh no, we don't do that. We don't do that. We're not supposed to do that. And so I just started digging in to learn a little bit more about it. And those were some of the buzzwords that came up. And then I know Terry and I have talked about it a few times over the years, just the impact of what parents are seeing and reading on social media or, in their news feeds versus maybe what some of the professionals and experts in the field are recommending.
So I don't do therapy. I only do assessment. But I definitely see this and hear like when parents are just telling me about their child, and sometimes the issue is really not something like it's not learning, it's not attention, it's not cognitive. It's really like behavioral stuff going on at home, parenting. Do any of you who do therapy find that parents are using this terminology of low demand? Like, do you think any of these parents are like seeking this out? Do they realize that they're using these concepts, or is it just kind of like they're not aware of, the terms low demand, gentle parenting? I'm sure it's probably like a mix, but I just wonder if you've ever had a family who's like come in and like, this is our approach, and really, name it.
So I have had that experience before. And as soon as you were saying that, the one thing that I was thinking, and I'm curious, Anna and Terry, you probably have more of a higher end, a bigger sample size than I do, because I only see a small amount for therapy in my practice. But I think what I have noticed or observed when I talk to these parents is that they will start this at a young age as a way to perhaps their goal at that age. So I'm talking like toddlerhood, early preschool level, is to increase communication skills with the child and things like that. But then never shift in the approach. And so then by the time these kids could be expected to have more problem solving skills and have more demands within the home setting, or be reaching some of these developmental milestones, like, I don't know, like driver's training, that's a big one. They've never sort of shifted their approach to that parenting that they started early on, I think, for good reasons, right? That approach of gentle parenting when the kiddos are smaller to like earn trust and increase communication, all those things. But it's resulted in these adolescents that then don't know how to meet demands when, or the parents don't know how to place demands. I don't know. Thoughts, Anna, Terry?
I think not setting limits in the short term feels really easy, obviously.
Yeah.
And a phrase that I've often said to parents is hard now, easy later. And
Mm-hmm.
putting in some of the work now on the front end is going to yield dividends down the road. However, when you've got a little kid tantruming and you can lean into this idea of, we're just going to let him feel his feelings. All feelings are for feeling. And let's just let it ride and let's create a receptacle or a venue for this. Yes. And never shifting from that, I think it allows parents to feel like I'm parenting the right way. That there's one right way to parent, which is also a misnomer. There are multitudes of right ways to parent. There's not one pathway. But I think for parents to, at the end of the day, and they're putting their head on their pillow at night, to feel like, I'm doing this the right way. I'm doing this the way that I saw on Instagram or TikTok. And I'm not going to set limits, or I'm going to approach this in a particular way. I'm just going to validate, and there's nothing coming after the validation of the emotional experiences. It's like the parents get the validation part and they don't get the next part.
Well, and I actually think that, and I'm going to mention a name, and I actually love this name, so this isn't dissing Dr. Becky, who's amazing.
Yeah.
I use a lot of her principles when I need like a skill for something that I'm like, I need some words with this. I need some words to back what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'll go to Dr. Becky. At the same time, I have found some of her messages of like, she does the whole, like, let them just be, like, get them in a safe room where they can't throw anything or whatever. I'm like, well, what room is that in my house? I don't know what room that is. Like, maybe make a whole room for them where they can just be with their feelings. And I'm like, well, what do I need to buy a new house to create a room? Don't send them to their room. Never send them to their room.
Don't do timeouts. Don't do
timeouts.
Charts.
And like, I'm sitting here being like, just sit with them until they calm down. I'm like, well, I have another child too. And okay. So I get stuck in that with like, but I'm trying to do all these things. And then it's kind of like, because if you do this, you're really shaming them. You're telling them that their emotions are scary and that you're scared of them, or that you can't handle their feelings. And like, oh, heaven forbid you get angry, like at some point, because you've been sitting with them for an hour. Like, it's like, you have to be a superhuman and just always be calm and sit on the bench with them. And again, I do love Dr. Becky. So I'm not trying to completely throw this out, but I know as a parent myself, I get stuck in that where I'm like, I want to do the right thing, but some of this doesn't feel right as a therapist. And I don't know. That's where I get stuck.
Well, I think there's a time and a place for it. So we were talking earlier before we started recording, like this all came from a good place.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. The research.
Yes. So tell us more about where this came from.
Where the gentle parenting.
Like where did this come from? Yeah.
Well, my understanding, and I'm certainly not an expert, my understanding is that it dates all the way back to Ross Greene and The Explosive Child, which is from the early 90s. So this is not, this is a really old research and data, but his philosophy was using some of the cognitive behavioral strategies in a little bit more of a flexible way. And so when I sit with parents and talk about this oftentimes, because what you just described, that tension of like, I want to do the right thing and I'm not sure what that exactly is in this moment, and I've also got other demands, and I'm a human, and all of the things. I think that there's those choice points that parents face, and so I'm always like, the way I try to phrase it for them is flexibility within the fidelity, right? So like we need to have some sort of structure and overarching like things that are non-negotiable in the home, and we have some flexibility for things we may choose that we're going to like not pick that fight today, but there's a little bit of flexibility, or I'm going to extend the time it takes the child to put the shoes on, or whatever the struggle point is for the day. But we're going to wear shoes to school. They're that flexibility, but also fidelity to the greater structure in the home. And I think, like, Dr. Becky's a great example. I love her stuff too. And she's one who talks often about like being the sturdy parent. And I do think she would say there's a time and a place for a consequence and an intervention.
Yep.
But if you're only listening to her sound bites and her social media, you're missing all of that.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you said, I love that flexibility with infidelity. One of the things that I have noticed, and I am actually currently working with a family on this, is that with the best of intentions, if we're too flexible in our approach, we lose sort of the values of the home. And so this is one of the things I'm working on with a family is they describe and acknowledge a lot of flexibility in working with their kids when they were younger. And now they have adolescents that are incredibly defiant and disrespectful within the home setting, do nothing to contribute to the household. And so that's where we're at and what they want to work on. And every time we start a conversation, it goes back. So you use the term fidelity. It goes back to, well, what are your values? Like, so one of the examples they gave was they are often all available for dinner and they don't sit down together as a family. And that's something that the parents have finally described as like, that's something that 15 years ago, we would say is absolutely a value. And we structured our schedule so that we could make it happen. And yet we are becoming these sous chefs for the kids, or they're making their own meals, or they're going back to their room with a meal, or they're standing at the table and eating. And so we were describing like, that's too much flexibility, to use your terminology. That's way too much flexibility. And as a result, you guys you're not doing anything to meet something that you describe as parents that you really value and that you want for your family. And so it's resulting in what they're describing or they're viewing as disrespect out of the kids. But what we are kind of reconfiguring as lack of skills, and like, okay, so how can we actually develop this skill set for these kids? Because they have no idea that this is something that's an expectation in the home. And then if they don't know it's an expectation, they don't know how to meet it.
Do you guys think that modern parents have confused flexibility or gentleness or with permissiveness? That means that
permissiveness is like a bad word.
Yeah, like I'm thinking parents who are actually being permissive behaviorally. They're allowing for maybe more than what aligns with their values, or what when they were pregnant or their kids were little, they're like, we will never do this when they're older, and things, have really gone off the rails. But they are telling themselves, parents are telling themselves,
Yes,
I'm being gentle, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but it's truly a free-for-all. It's permissiveness, and the kids aren't doing much besides going to school, maybe.
Well, I think that's
sometimes
very
not going
true.
to school.
Sometimes they're not going to school. I think that
is
true.
Yeah.
I think they are, when they explain a behavior, they call it gentle parenting, and what they're being permissive. And yes, so I 100% agree with that in terms of like, where is that line? It's a gray line, right? Or it's a gray area, but there is a place where one is one thing and one is another.
And why do you think modern parents like this concept so much? Why do you think that this feels good to them, or it resonates with them so well?
I don't even know that it feels good to them, because they end up
in Anna's office. Yeah.
I think one thing, and we've talked about this before with different topics, social media. Like, how many times have you like logged into your Instagram, right? And you see a clip of whoever right? And they're describing this. So I think part of it is that you're like inundated with this concept, even though, like you said, you're just getting this like bite-sized snippet of what this concept really is. And so I think part of it is a little bit like peer pressure, I think, because I don't know that they love like the outcome of it. Like, I don't think it's working well for everyone, at least to a certain point, right? So I don't know that they are enjoying this, other than feeling like this is what you're supposed to be doing because this is what other people are doing, or this is what social media says I should be doing. Well, and maybe they just don't like how like what they experienced as a kid, and so they're trying to do it different, but they just don't know how to do it different. Like, this is different but not necessarily better.
That's what I see in my practice. And with other people, other friends I talk to, I think there's a lot of like, maybe they came from a very different childhood where, I mean, back in the day, it was like children should be seen, not heard, and like lots of discipline, lots of,
like this kind of discipline. Like
yes,
you're moving your head. Like this kind of discipline.
And
Mhm.
they then see this as like, oh, okay, so I don't want this. And so then this is what I should be doing, when you're like, oh no, we don't go all the way over there. We maybe, it's that line of, I don't want to be harsh. I don't want to be critical. I don't want to be mean. I've heard people say they want to be friends with their kids. And I'm always like, oh, careful with that.
Not their friend.
Yeah, you're not their friend. You are their parent.
It makes me think about the shift in the parenting that you talked about earlier, just from maybe a more strict disciplinarian to something that's much more gentle. But the focus, I think there's something a little deeper for the parents. If we go back to that, I don't know, when I was raised in the 90s and whatnot, and children should be seen and not heard. Like a good parent was identified by the way the child was behaving.
Yeah.
You were a good parent. And I think the shift has been by these parents who were raised with that kind of discipline, to the mark of a good parent is a parent who can stay calm and who can co-regulate and who can be attuned to their child and who can, empathize and teach their child to have an emotional language and be able to advocate for themselves. The shift is to the parent's behavior being the marker of good or bad parenting, which I don't know which is right or wrong, but I think both leave something out.
Well, and
Totally.
what we have is a generation of kids who were raised to, in that strict way. And now they're supposed to be the parents that can self-regulate and do all that. But actually those two things one does not lead to the other. So you also have this thing of this generation of people being like, okay, how do I figure out how to self-regulate and hold my emotions and stay calm in all of this, when they haven't necessarily learned those skills themselves?
But I also think it brings the focus for the parents back to themselves, which is very egocentric, and that having a kid and being a parent is all about them and how they're doing and if they're doing a good job or not, and if they feel good doing it and if they're doing it the right way. I feel like it's a very egocentric focus. I think
Part of their identity.
yes. Yes. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Your own behavior than your child's behavior, though, too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some teenagers in my house, so I can assure you that it is much easier to control myself than to control them some days. So, I think there's something in that too, where that ease, if that's the judge of what makes me good or bad.
Well, and something else I was thinking about, Anna, when you were describing a sort of the shift of parenting, is there's also been a shift, I think, and I wonder if you guys agree, as to what schools talk a lot now about social emotional development. And while that's
part of the curriculum,
part of the curriculum,
Yeah.
while that's a very good thing, it does, like, you feel pressure as a parent in the same way you feel pressure to make sure you're reading with them at home, because now it's part of what they're actually observing and grading and working with these kids on school. So while these things are all really, if we take that step back, that spotlight back, and you look at them, they're positive, right? It also does create sort of these increased expectations on everybody involved.
Yeah.
And so to become more permissive or gentle or whatever term we want to use is actually many days, it just like sounds easier. It just kind of like sounds nice. Like, let's just put it on the school. And I don't even think it's intentional. I can see myself feeling that way. I have a great one for you guys. In Michigan, the law for front seat, for kids to sit in the front seat changed overnight.
Oh.
Like literally May 1st, they're like, oh, just kidding. Whereas before it was, I think it was like
height in pounds or something, probably.
Yep. It was a minimum of 8 years old, and then you had to be this many pounds and this height. So both of my boys, who are 99th percentile for height, were that way before 8, but I was pushing it. So they're now 10 and 11 and a half, and they've been sitting in the front seat for like the last year. They rotate, right? May 1st, they changed it to 13.
Because ours is 12, I think, here in Illinois.
13.
Hard
Well,
stop.
Oh,
hard
Okay,
stop.
13.
No weight, no height, 13. Well, and of course they don't put any information on the state website, right? So my kids are challenging me and questioning me on this every day. And then we go into the school parking lot, and clearly many parents have not seen the change in the law. So I immediately put them in the back seat. It's the law. And they're every day. And their friends, like half their size, they're like, look, he's in the front seat still. I mean, they're like literally pointing at vehicles as we're driving by. And every ounce, there are so many days that I just want to be like, you're right. You guys have been fine for a year. You'll still be fine. I don't know why they did this, whatever. Right.
well, and Sam is the height
Oh my God.
of many
He's a
13-year-olds.
He's like, Mom, if
like
a police officer pulled us over, I could just say I was 13. I'm like, great. He is though, which is so frustrating because like as a parent, right, we get this information, and guess where I learned it? Social media. Somebody posted on social media that the Michigan state law was about to change and pay attention and whatever. But then we have nothing behind it. And then I'm trying to make the right decision as a parent. But we don't really, it's hard. Like I can see like there are many days where I just want to be like, fine, just sit in the front seat. It's fine. I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. I don't know why they did it. I don't know. Right. So like you throw your hands up. But if you do that over time, I think this speaks to what Anna is probably you're seeing in your practice, which is there was too much flexibility. And then I've lost the fidelity of that moment, that concept, that learning opportunity. And so now I have my kids questioning me on more than just the front seat.
And then what happens is I think the biggest issue is when we're seeing a lot of these kids at the end of high school or in college and they're not thriving.
Yeah.
And I think, I've had colleagues of mine who are training students, and I used to train 10 years ago when I was still working in an academic medical center. And I saw some of the shift, but now it's very clear, when we were training, when we were students, it was kind of like that what we just described as like the parent-child relationship where your supervisor was like, do this, you did it, even if you were working 400 hours.
They said jump and you said how high to your supervisor.
How high, right? Or you even were like, okay, I'm going to go 5 feet higher than they just said because I want to show them, prove to them that I should be here. And that is not the mentality of the current students, trainees.
I'm gonna tread lightly.
There's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of pushback, like what Lauren, right? But why are we doing that? I'm working too hard. This, or like not telling you, like there's just such. So I think that the issue with this is, right in that moment, Lauren, it's easy to be like, okay, just sit there, right? So
easy.
But then what have you taught him? That he can lie to the police
push,
officer when the police officer rolls. Right. That we don't have to follow the rules, right? There's all these things that like don't seem like a big deal in the moment, but if you look at the bigger picture, no, there's a reason why you're doing that, because you're being a good parent, you're teaching your children lessons in those little minutes, those little moments. There's these bigger life lessons, which I think are being missed. And then the outcome is what happens when you become an adult. I mean, our job as parents is we're helping our kids prepare for being independent adults, right? Isn't that part of our job? Isn't that the majority of our job? And if we're not preparing them for,
then what's the point?
The things to come.
So Anna, what do you suggest for parents when you have a parent that comes in and maybe has an older kid that you're like, I don't know what happened.
Right.
Like now,
get him out of my house.
Get him out of my house.
That failure to launch movie with
yes, Matthew McConaughey. Yes,
that is what's happening. That's what's happening.
And where do you even start? You're like, get in your time machine, go back.
Usually we start with a good evaluatory.
Yes.
And make sure that there's no other underlying stuff that hasn't been identified that needs to be addressed. Medication, if we need to address that. But I think oftentimes, like, again, it starts in such a good place of wanting to be highly attuned and to know your child really well. So that's usually where I start and lean in on that part is, what do you know about your child? And ask a lot of questions like, what do you think they're truly capable of versus not capable of? And, the fully functional contributing members of society, like that's always my mission statement as a parent. I say that in therapy a million times a day to parents, like, what is it that your goal is? And going back to those values, like you were speaking about, Lauren, too, and just how do we get realigned and then start to gradually build some expectations. But they kind of like one of the things there, I think, there's always this dance that parents are doing. I always tell them it's like a cha-cha, right? Like, when are we going to push and when are we going to support?
Yep.
And the place where I think parents often struggle is making that very decision. And that is usually one of the things I spend a ton of time on, because I just think that's where every child is different. The things we're going to, every family system is different and every value is different. And I think a lot of times good parents who have very good intentions and want the best for their kids struggle to make that very decision in the nitty gritty day to day of, are we going to sit in the front seat or are we just going to, pick that battle right now?
Yep.
Because it's important that we respect the authority of the police department. I don't know what
Right.
it might be.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, because there are things that when you were saying that, it's like, I also don't care if my, kids want to do their hair a certain way or, wear a certain, whatever. It's like, that's where for my, very few exceptions, like holidays, there are certain things, but I always let them pick from those certain things that they have to wear or whatever. I always say, like, there's like 3 days a year that you have to do your hair. Otherwise, I don't really care what it is. And it's like literally like, Christmas, there's like 3 days, right? School pictures, whatever. But then I can vary, because I'm showing them there are some days where this is the expectation. This is important. Here's why. And we are constantly having that conversation of, because I follow the rules. And if a police officer pulled me over, I would tell him, you're 11. I would not lie. Right. So like and I don't really want to get a ticket. And then you would be paying for that ticket.
You'd be paying for that
ticket. I kind of go through that whole right. But then there are, hey mom, can I wear this? I don't know, this sweatshirt to church. It's a hoodie sweatshirt. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to church. I don't care what you wear. You're coming to church. Awesome. Like, that's cool. Right. So that's something that like I can be more flexible on, but that dance, I love that. The cha-cha. And sometimes it's a little bit more of an intense dance than even that, right? But that's what is so hard. And I think where the value of therapy really comes into play for families, because there's lots of books, but when it comes to that family, their values and their particular kids, it can be really, really helpful to have that outside party saying, okay, let's learn about your kid. Let's learn about what you want. And then here are some ideas I have to support you in figuring out how to get there.
Terry, you said this to me years ago, might have even been before we actually had kids, like at all. And you had said something, because I think you were talking about when you talk to parents with teens or something. And you said, what I always say is, say yes to things like, can I wear the hoodie to church? Can I want to dye my hair purple. I want a second piercing, say yes to those things, especially in teen years, as much as you can, so that the things you're saying no to actually matter.
Yes.
And you said something like, there's parents that spend so much time being like, no, you can't cut your hair. You can't dye your hair. You can't wear this. You can't wear that. You can't do this. To the things that you're like, really? You're going to die on that hill? Yeah. So that when they say, no, I don't want you
sleeping over at your boyfriend's house.
Yes. Yes. That just gets lumped into,
she doesn't let me do anything.
Yeah. Yes. And I still think about that. I tell my patients that. I think about that with my own kiddo. And when she's saying she wants to do things, wear things, whatever. And so I'm wondering how like that kind of fits in, because that's where you your kid, that's with the fidelity, like where are your family values? Because that's where you're going to want to say the no's. That's where you're going to be like, nope, this is one of those areas where I'm going to hold the line here.
And I'm going to just say, Mark, are you listening? Because this is something that my husband and I talk about a lot about. There's going to be, and I say this, there's going to be a lot of no's coming down the road for my daughter. There's a lot of no's because the phone, the social media, there's going to be a lot of no's coming. And so I'm going to say yes as much as I can. So like her current thing is she likes to play with makeup. She does not watch YouTube. She doesn't know what, she just sees it and likes it. And I'm like,
Well, because
why
I'm sure
not?
she sees you like
Yeah,
that. She's
that's what I
watching
mean.
you. She's like, Mom's interested in this. I
Right.
want to try it.
And when
Yeah.
I was a kid, I liked it too. She doesn't leave the house with it. She's just playing with it in the house, and she takes it off like
I
it's
did
okay.
that when I
I'm
was a
glad.
kid. Yeah.
Like it's a kid thing,
Yeah.
right? So I'm gonna say yes to as much as I can because there's a lot of hard no's coming.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that, and I've been trying to like just prepare, for down the road. Like we're talking about, like it's right now. It would be so simple to just be like, oh, but I know what's coming, and so I'm preparing, us for the no's that are to come because there's going to be some hard no's coming.
And I think in the vein of discussing no's, it's important for parents to try to tell kids what they can do. So if they ask to go to a particular event or they want to go to the lake house in Michigan for prom weekend that everybody's going to, and it's not going to be very well supervised and you don't want your 16 or 17-year-old going, it's not just a hard no, but it's here's what I am willing to allow you to do, et cetera. And if there's some kind of middle ground, so it's not, all or nothing. So I think when you are saying no, you need to be real quick on the draw to also have what can they do? So it's not just, no, you can't have a phone. Sorry. No, but maybe we'll get you a watch so we can figure out your location and you can do some texting and et cetera. Like there's some kind of in between.
Yeah. Like, no, you're not getting an Apple or, iPhone, but I'll get you an old school flip phone. And there you go. Terry, for the lake house thing, what would you say as a therapist? What would you say?
For 16 or 17?
Oh,
like what would go?
I want to go to the lake house, the prom party. So what's the thing?
I think it's so nuanced. Who is all going? Will it actually be chaperoned? Who are the chaperones? Are they someone I know well or not? What are those conversations? Some of these weekend extravaganzas will have different adults rotating per day. Like they'll have a Saturday set of parents, a Sunday set of parents. So I'd like to be one of those maybe. Like I'd be more than willing to go. Oh, your aunt actually has a lake house that's 20 minutes from there.
Just going to say,
what if we go
staying there? Yeah,
what if we go stay there and you can go and I'll pick you up at 11 o'clock. We'll check in, et cetera. I think there's a lot of flexibility that can be built in, but that requires a lot more work from the parents on the front end to do all of that.
Yeah.
They have to know what their values are, like what's important to them.
Well, I also think it depends on your kid, right? So I think I agree with everything you just said, but I also think it's very kid dependent, right?
Oh,
You're going to have
100%.
some teens who like could go to that party and
be fine,
be okay, and then you have some that are not going to. Like, so I think being aware of who your child is, right? And what they are, what they can do. But I think you have, that's hard work because you have to know who your kid is. And then you have to be able to set the groundwork for whatever kind of, exchange you're going to offer them, in place of that thing that they're asking for that you just don't feel is appropriate in that moment.
What would you say? What would you say, Anna?
Yeah.
I probably would agree with you. My mom instinct was like hard no.
I know. I know.
Nope. Absolutely not.
I know what's happening at that party. I was at that party. No.
But I think, like you described, there's like that room for the flexibility. I also think, and this is the part where I think a lot of also parents struggle when I'm sitting in the office with families. A lot of times it's when you want to place a demand on your child, there's the I don't want my child to be overscheduled, right?
Yep.
But I have a 13 and a 14-year-old, and if I don't schedule things for them, I assure you they will spend all day on a video game.
Yeah.
100%.
No matter how beautiful it is outside. So it's like, what do you ask of them during the day? And so in terms of like even those big events, like is this a kid who's doing all the other things, and this is an opportunity for them to really have some fun and connect with friends? Is this a kid who's hanging out with their friends every day all week and not advancing on some of those developmental milestones? There's just a lot of question marks in there. But I do think that idea of just like how do parents decide what things they do ask of the child and have some level of demand on them is also, like, especially in the middle years, like it seems really obvious when they're young. As they get to be later adolescents, it's like, oh yeah, we got to pick a college, sports teams, the things happen, like there seems more obvious, but there's all this room in the middle where I think parents have a hard time figuring out what are the appropriate demands, if you will, to put on the kids.
Anna, it's interesting what you said, the overscheduled part, because one thing that actually ties into this is, a lot of the kids with all of the sports, which we had a whole topic on kids and sports, but I hear a lot, oh, they just really wanted to do, this and this and this. My kid just really wanted to do that. And that would be an example where I'd be like, okay, in our family, you can pick one, pick your favorite. Like, we'll make sure we make time for that, but we don't have time for three because your sibling also has one and I have a job, and as a family we don't have time for all of that, but we absolutely will make time for one. So you pick your favorite, instead of just saying yes, well, that they wanted all of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. Yeah.
And I think this whole conversation highlights that all five of us went into parenthood having already been trained as clinical psychologists and practicing before we had kids. And it highlights that we approach these endeavors still questioning and wondering and like, how do we do this? What do we do? So I imagine for those who don't have the same background and training we do, it has to feel very overwhelming in general. And really any answers that sound good in the moment people are probably really going to latch on to, especially moms.
Yeah. I think it's also important for people to know that everything you said, like we've been trained, parenting, we work with kids, right? I don't want to speak for anyone else here, but I can certainly say that I have yelled before.
Oh my God.
I have lost my cool before.
All the time. Yeah. Yes.
So we are not immune to,
all the time.
those moments.
We have all texted each other of like, oh my God, I just lost it on Griffin. He wanted to report me to and like, that was just an incident where like that was where he was like, Mom, I could report you for that. I'm like, no, you couldn't, but that's a nice, gut punch. That's a nice gut punch.
Right. Me yelling is not reportable, but thank you for saying that to me.
Thank you for making me feel real special right now in this spiral of shame I'm in. Okay, cool. But yeah, we text each other all the time about questions. What would we do? What would you do? What should I do? I did this. How do I repair? And we do know a lot of this stuff. So absolutely, this is trial and error all of the time.
Yeah. Parenting is not easy. It's a hard job. Like, it's a hard job, and we're all doing the absolute best that we can.
I also think course correction is always possible. So I sometimes think parents think, oh, I've already done this, or I already said yes to this, or I was doing it this way for so long, I don't think I can go back and demand more, ask more. And I think it was Glennon Doyle that said this in some, I don't know if it was her Untamed book, but she was like, course correction is always possible. Like, if you're like, hey, I was not expecting as much from you, and now you're 14, and I see that as like, ooh, I'm going to actually, and you have a talk with them, I'm going to actually be asking you to do some more things because I need to prepare you for adulthood. And so this might be a shift. And it's not always going to be fun, but I'm your mom. And I realized that I made, I was doing some things I think were not the right way, and I'm going to course correct. And
I think that's one of the most powerful tools as a parent is course. I mean, you literally can do that for anything that you've done.
Yeah.
That you're now
almost everything.
Right. Almost everything. Like, it's a very powerful tool as a parent. And I think it's also like such a good, a skill to show your kids, right? That you've made a mistake, or maybe you didn't even make a mistake. Maybe you thought something was right. Now you've learned some new information. You're like, oh, this is a better way to do it. Or this is something that we weren't aware of that now, like, social media is a great one, right? Like, parents who are allowing their kids to do that initially didn't have any data to say that this was a bad thing. But now we know that. So you can always, like in these situations say, okay, I have new information. I have new whatever. And so we're going to change things. I know it's not going to be easy. See, there you go. I'm validating your feelings, right? However,
It's going to suck.
this is what we're going to do. Yeah.
I think bedtime and screen time are the two that it's the most challenging.
To course
Yes.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
like bedtime is one I hear all the time. Like,
Yep.
oh, now, but how are they going to go from staying up till 2:00 to going to bed at 11? How are we going to make that shift?
Small increments, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
How
One
slow
step
do
at a
you
time.
often maybe this is, I was going to say you can always course correct. And in some ways, that's probably how you and Terry started talking about this over the last few years. People are coming to you for that exact reason, is to course correct. So how often do you have to start from the beginning? Like when these kids are like in adolescence and don't have a bedtime, are you like in these tiny small step moments with families?
I think so. Yeah. I'm often like, I usually start with the structure of the day.
Yeah.
We're just going to and that's the conversation. Like, it's not healthy to stay up till 2:00 and then to sleep till 11 and miss the morning of school. And this isn't, I'm not doing a good job of preparing you for college if I do that, or, the working world. So let's work together to find a strategy that's going to help us get everybody back on a healthier sleep schedule. And a lot of times in those scenarios, although the child may not be feeling a lot of stress about the demands being placed on them, there is tension in the home.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
parents are walking on eggshells, the parents are fighting behind closed doors, there's arguing that's happening. So no one in the house is feeling great.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just not sure how to get unstuck.
Yeah.
That's why they come to you.
Any other thoughts on today's topic?
No, I'm just so glad Anna could join us. Thank you.
I know. Thank you for
This has
joining
been
us.
Great.
Yeah, it's great.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us on the Shrink Down. Again, just wanted to mention this is our last episode of this season. We will be back in the fall. We'll make sure to post online when we'll be back. And please join us in the next season.
Have a nice summer.